Welcome to Wagner. Now, this is probably the biggest presentation of the entire course. I'll have to divide it, I suspect, into three separate commentaries. But I wanted to put it all in one page so you could get a sense of the big picture. Just looking over Wagner's travels through his life, you're not just getting the development of a single man, a single composer, and not just the development of opera, but you're really getting with him kind of a microcosm of the history of Europe in the 19th century and enormous changes that are taking place culturally, politically, aesthetically. So let's jump in. I mean, he really is a figure that looms over Europe. So Wagner was born in Leipzig in 1813. His father died when he was 6 months old. It was in later years, because of Wagner's anti-Semitism, there was lots of rumors floated about whether his father was Jewish or not. Probably not true, but not that much is known about his father. His mother remarried, he moved to Dresden, and he spent most of his young years in Dresden. It's significant because he later comes back to Dresden, and his first great successes are in Dresden. He does move back to Leipzig later, though. Goes to university there. Has a promising career. He's recognized as a very talented composer and musician. So he gets appointed as a chorus master in a small city, Würzburg. And there he composes his first complete opera. He'd already been working on opera. From the very beginning, Wagner wanted to write opera. And he wrote an opera called The Fairies in the style of Weber. You can probably guess why. It's in the style of Weber. It's a fairy tale. He works his way up, gets appointed music director of a theater in Magdeburg, a slightly larger and a more important position. Here he works on an Italian-style opera called Das Liebesverbot, based on Shakespeare's Measure for Measure. It's comic. It was a disaster. It was closed before even the second performance. Wagner did one good thing, or sort of good thing, happened to him while he was in Magdeburg. He fell in love with one of the leading actresses at the theater, Mina Planner, and followed her after the financial collapse of the theater, and followed her to Königsberg, a town in the south, where they married. Now, it was a rocky marriage, I think, from beginning to end. After 1 year, she apparently left him for another man, and Wagner took a position all the way in Riga. Now, Riga, let me just back up again. That's a long way. Riga is part of the Russian Empire. You can imagine what such a move would represent in those days. Now, he did manage somehow to reconcile with Mina, partially by hiring her sister, who was a singer. So he reconciled the marriage, and she joined him there in Riga. But the company again faltered, collapsed financially. This is a recurring theme, as you might be able to pick up. Wagner ran up huge debts. They both did. And he left. And when I say he left, it means he fled without a passport illegally. And took a boat trip. Again, I'll just look at the trip here. Quite a long boat trip all the way across to the North Sea to London on his way to Paris. Now, what's significant about that trip is that the stormy passage later inspired him to compose the Flying Dutchman, where the stormy sea is a major theme. Again, returning to the idea of nature playing a dramatic role, not just a setting, but a dramatic role in the conflict of the opera. So he didn't stay in London very long. He was headed to Paris, the capital of opera culture in Europe in the first half of the 19th century. Now, his goal was to have his new grand opera, Rienzi, based on a story from ancient Rome, to have it produced at the Paris Opera, and he would make his fame. That was the plan. It didn't work out. He made a very meager living, basically copying scores and arranging scores for a publishing company. I also wrote a little bit. He composed quite a bit. Nothing was produced there, though. He composed Rienzi and definitely into Hollander. Now, he sought out the most successful composer of the day, Giacomo Meyerbeer. Meyerbeer was having one success after another at the Paris Opera, writing grand opera. Now, I'm just going to jump ahead of the grand opera. I've touched on a little bit in the previous unit, an Italian opera. I didn't go into it in a lot of detail. It's essentially a French style, though some German composers write in it as well. And it influences the Italian style. But and it shares much with the Italian style. It sort of combines the Italian singing with the French heroic orchestral style. And it's on a grand stage, not literally and metaphorically in terms of a grand stage of history. The stories are drawn from big historical events. So back to Meyerbeer. Meyerbeer is a Jewish composer. He was born in Germany. Wagner sought him out as a mentor, really, because he thought, I think Wagner really thought that Meyerbeer was just going to look at his work and say, "You're great, I'll just take it over to the Paris Opera and tell them to do it." Things don't work out quite that way. Meyerbeer was helpful to Wagner, and through his connections, actually did help get Rienzi premiered in Dresden. So, not that Wagner was appreciative of that, but that's a different story that we're going to get into later. So, I want to expose you to a little bit of Meyerbeer and French Grand Opera. This is a finale of his Les Huguenots, about the French Protestants who were massacred in 1573 by the Catholic government. This opera was written in 1836. You'll see and hear a lot of similarities with Lucia di Lammermoor, was written just the year before. It is a heavier orchestral style, but you see John Sutherland is playing the Queen, and it follows the general Italian number structure. So Wagner, meanwhile, is left, and he's gone to Dresden, where Rienzi is produced, and it's a real success. And Wagner decides to stay in Germany. He feels this is where his roots are, and this is where his real spirit is. And he renounced. In his earlier operas, he had tried to write in other styles. Here he returns to his German romantic roots and completely embraces them. He's also determines he's going to write the libretto from now on. He's going to control his literary sources. He's going to control everything. And he creates, in the 1840s, three very successful, and his first lasting successes: Flying Dutchmman, 1843, Tannhäuser, 1845, and then eventually Lohengrin, which was finished by 1848 or 49. It wasn't produced until 1850 for reasons we'll get into. But Lohengrin was the finest of these three German romantic operas and established his lasting reputation. So he gets an important court appointment to the Royal Saxon Court, and everything seems Wagner is on track to become what he hopes to be. Let's go into Flying Dutchman, and we'll see Wagner's German tradition and see what new things he brings to the opera, and also what traditional things he brings. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I give an audio commentary, but I'm going to take you through Sainte's aria. So when you listen to it again, you'll hear me talk in some specific detail about how the music is structured. Sainte's aria is not that conventional. excuse me, it's not unconventional. It's pretty conventional, but there's two important things. Is that the aria recapitulates themes you've heard in the overture. Actually, it's really vice versa. Wagner wrote the overture later, and he took the themes from Sanctus Ballad and other parts of the opera. Um, he lays out two important themes, musical themes and dramatic themes. One, the curse, the Dutchman's curse, which is what is causing all the trouble in the opera, and the redemption through love theme. What is going to save him? He's going to be, the Flying Dutchman is going to be redeemed by love. So this redemption, to make a long story short, and you're going to have to read the synopsis to fully grasp this, the redemption comes in the form of Sancta, this young woman who's always has become obsessed with the Flying Dutchman and his legend. She commits suicide, and that not only kills her, but it allows him and his crew to die. May seem strange. It's ironic, to put it mildly. In German romantic operas, when the lovers die at the end, that's regarded as a happy ending. And this goes back to this romantic idea I talked about earlier. The world as we know it is, from a romantic standpoint, is doomed to suffer. You're doomed to suffer. Your hopes and dreams are destined to be unfulfilled. This world is an imperfect place. And the only way to attain your highest goal, your highest ideals, is in an afterlife. So it's in death. And you may notice some similarities between that and traditional Christian beliefs. Wagner wrote many operas that were explicitly Christian. Flying Dutchman is not one. His story belongs to German legend. He also uses medieval German mythology. But he also touches on medieval Christian myths. The final scene of this opera is remarkable. This is from a movie from 1975. There are some parts of the movie that are a little hokey, but there are many parts that are very good, and its ending it's Wagner's original ending that he wrote in 1843. He later changed it. Changed the very ending significantly musically and dramatically. And if you see it at the Metropolitan Opera, you'll see a different ending. But I think it's good to know that that was something that he changed much later in his life to make Lohengrin more similar to the dramas of his later dramas, his later music dramas, which does not represent exactly where he was at that point in time. This is the alternate ending that is from a wonderful production with an excellent singing by Deborah Voigt that you might be interested in, just for comparison. You get a very different sense of the ending of the opera by these two different endings.